people do give up. Like I've seen, like you call one time or two times and it's like, oh, they didn't answer. It's not a good lead, I guess. And they start making all these like weird stories in their head about like what this lead is and what this is not. It's just running it like an emergency room. It is like 100% go. And you just, another patient. All right, guys, welcome to the Phone Warriors podcast that unlocks the secrets of real estate success, one call at a time. I'm your host, Dean Clark, and we also have Richard Damsky. Hello.
And I'm Richard Damsky. I'm Richard Damsky. Together, we've closed over $1 billion in real estate deals. And in this podcast, we're sharing our battle-tested strategies, tips, and stories that have made us the phone warriors of the industry.
I love it.
Emily, do you have anything to say?
And I'm Emily Brown. I'm down in Raleigh, North Carolina.
All right.
From cold calling techniques that convert to negotiating like a pro, we're here to equip you with the skills and mindset to conquer your real estate goals. So grab your headset, get ready to dial in and join us in the trenches as we transform you into a true phone warrior. Let's get started.
Let's go, people. All right. So the topic of today, everybody, is expired listings. And that's, I could say, Rich and Emily, I think we all agree here that expired listings is probably our foundation of how we get our seller business. Would you guys agree?
That's definitely how I build my business. Yes.
All right, cool. So the first thing I was thinking about with expireds, honestly, was, what is so attractive to us when it comes to expireds? Like Rich, I guess we'll start with you because like, obviously, I have a different definition of it. For me, it's always been it's predictable. There's always going to be someone coming up there and showing up every single day. It's a predictable source of revenue that you can count on, assuming you know what you're doing and how to talk. So Rich, what about you?
No, I agree. So expired listings is how we both built our business, right? And so what's so attractive about them is that we know that they signed a listing agreement with some realtor that was out there, right? And for whatever reason, that realtor was not able to perform to sell their house, right? So I like to think about it as the low-hanging fruit, right? So low-hanging fruit meaning, listen, they signed a contract, they're potentially ready, willing, and able to potentially work with another agent. So, why not come to us with our proven track records, our techniques to be able to sell a property? Do you agree?
Yeah. Emily, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's like a limiting belief that expireds aren't motivated from what I've found, but you have to look at their actions, right? I mean, they interviewed agents, they signed a listing agreement, and it came to market. And I think a lot of times they just aligned with the wrong agent in most cases. A lot of the expireds that I've taken personally, they took the advice of a friend, they went with the neighbor, they went with the family member, and they were just misguided. And so they're just looking for somebody that can point them in the right direction and, get the home sold. So I think, that's kind of been my hyper focus recently, is just every single morning calling the new expireds.
And then Emily, can you actually talk about that? Because you had probably one of the biggest breakouts that I've seen personally. I've never seen someone have a breakout of just expired focused listing seller business in a matter of like, I think it was like 3 months or so. You were just calling like crazy, and it just so happened that the market turned, so you were able to you had like a doubling of, let's say, of the numbers that you can call. So can you talk about that a little bit, about what was in your mindset then as you were calling to get that seller business and to have the success that you had? I mean, I think you were listing like close to 10 a month, at least for like the first and second quarters. And so if you can talk about that, that'll be, I think, super helpful.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I was pretty buyer heavy, right? Because I'm on a team. And so we do a ton of buyer business, and I was getting burnt out. It was during COVID. And so I was just running around constantly nonstop. And I was like, if I really want to take control of my business, I'm either going to call expireds or I'm going to call for sale by owners. So I flipped a coin. I was like, I'm going to start with expired. And so I didn't really start hyper focused on expireds until I guess it was end of last year. Things started slowing down a little bit. So I just was consistent with my actions, right? And I think that's what it all comes down to, is if you're consistent with it, you're showing up, doing it every single day, you can't lose. And so I just kept showing up. I kept calling. And eventually I started landing appointments, and then you build that confidence. The more appointments you go on, the more listings you take. It's just like a spiral effect. So
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
then
just,
actually, can you talk about that? Like you're like, how do you stay consistent? That's a question in the phone words that comes up, it seems like, with a lot of agents. They either are newer in the business. How do you stay consistent? And Rich, you can answer that next, because you know, obviously there's a lot of different thoughts on that.
well, I think it's us joining forces and starting our phone warriors, right? So I wanted to show up for you guys. I wanted to show up for the other agents in the group. So that is what really kind of spearheaded everything. Was I'm going to show up. I've got to be present. We're leaders of this group. So showing up every day consistently. And when you start doing something day in and day out, it gets ingrained in you. And so you're like, okay, this is just part of my routine. It feels natural, and then things just start happening. So I think that's the hardest thing for people, is just to get into that routine and just start that consistency piece. So,
And do you
Yeah, that's
suggest
huge.
that there's any better times to call? Because I know a lot of agents, they're scared to call at 7:45. They're scared to call at 8 a.m. They might even be scared to call at 9 a.m. Right? But do you
I
see any
know.
difference in the time that you call, whether it be morning, afternoon, or night?
I think you have to try all of it, right? I think you can't just call once and hope that it works. And I think that's what a lot of agents do, is they call at 7:45 or 8 in the morning. They don't get the response. They don't get the pickups. And so they're like, you know what, this isn't working for me. I'm just going to try something different. I'm going to call FSBOs, or I'm going to whatever. So I call in the morning, I call in the afternoon, I call in the evening. There's no really pattern to it. It's just constantly just picking up and calling multiple times. I think it's 17 times you have to reach out to someone before you actually get an appointment in some cases. So sure, you're going to get, people that answer on the first call, but it's the last man standing. So if you're
Emily, didn't you
it,
set a record? Sorry, didn't you set a record for like calling someone? I think you posted something in the group. Like it was like what was it? It was like 16 times from the same number, and finally they picked up, and it
yeah,
was like you
it
got the
is
listing, and that was it, right?
100%. You just got to wear them out, right? And so I think that's key. And so most people are going to give up after 3 or 4 calls. Sometimes my best conversions are the older expireds. It's the ones that people aren't calling anymore. They've given up, and so I go after those. So I'm like, okay, they've already been worn out 3 weeks ago. They're probably not getting as many calls. I'm going to tackle them now, and I'm just going to keep calling. So I wish there was a set formula that we could give people, but it's just a matter of consistency and just continuing to call and call and call and call. So
Yeah. I mean,
what
for
about
me,
you?
yeah, I was gonna say, for me, this is, I think, the whole like thing about like people do give up. Like I've seen, like
Mm-hmm.
you call 1 time or 2 times, and it's like, well, they didn't answer. I guess it's not a good lead. I guess, and they start making all these like weird stories in their head about like what this lead is and what
Mm-hmm.
this is not. And like
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, but you have to also realize in the times that we are in 2023, calling expires, I think, is a lot different than when it was in 1985 versus 2005. And what I mean by that is
Mm-hmm.
the time has gotten compressed. In other words, there's so many distractions for these expireds to go different directions at an instantaneously. As an example, I called the guy this morning. He's telling me he found someone on Google yesterday, and they already have signed paperwork as of like that night. And it's like, that is crazy that you found someone on Google that quickly. So how do you get around that? At least for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's just running it like an emergency room. It is like
It's a great
100% go,
analogy,
go,
emergency room.
go, 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 and you just another patient, but you keep
Yeah.
calling, like you said, and that, because unless you can control the narrative of compressing that time down, I think for expireds, guys, I don't know, you're gonna have a very hard time with that particular lead source. But what do you think, Rich?
Mm-hmm.
I think that to Emily's point is staying consistent, and she said one crucial thing is a couple weeks old lead is going to have less activity than a fresh expired, right? Day 1 expired, day 2, day 3, they're probably still getting bombarded, but you go back 7 days, you go back 14, 21, and if you want to go back 1, 2, 3 months, you're probably going to get a higher pickup rate in the latter part. I think
Yeah.
that if we're gonna beat down the expireds, is do it in the morning. Get those 17 phone calls in between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. because just like how you said this morning, I was calling and I started at 8 o'clock on the dot. I went to that list, I think 6 times, but by 9 o'clock, I just kept recalling the list. And finally the lady picked up and was like, "You keep calling me, why?" And we had a conversation. I was like, well, finally you're going to pick up. So why not take the adage of continuously pound that same source for as long as you can in the shortest amount of time before even agents are going to be waking up, because some agents are not even up at by 9 a.m., right? So why not
Yeah,
take,
100%.
why not get the early bird gets the worm, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you guys ever do any mail, like direct mail to expireds, or do you guys mainly just
I'm a
I mean,
hammer
I
on
fan
the
of
card?
tried. Yeah, I don't know about you, Rich. I tried doing that. I had a 10 days of pain campaign. This was like a few years
Uh-huh.
back before COVID.
Hmm.
And it was just like mail that expired like constantly. Just like one day, it was once a day for 10 days. And
Yeah.
we think we did it for maybe 6 months. Everything we try and test is always 6 months minimum. So it's like 6 months of that. And the phone call is just where it's at. I don't know. It just direct mail. I think I got one call back, but it was the tenant of the property. It wasn't even the
Hmm.
actual person, because it was like the
Hmm.
wrong person living there. So,
Yeah.
you could be that passive. I think it's okay. But for this kind of source, like they want results like now if they are serious about doing something. Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. I agree with
yeah.
you. I've tested mailing. I'm starting to do it just to see. I'm calling them, of course, but I'm like, what, for the ones that aren't answering, I still want to reach them. So I'm sending like letters. I'm doing it two ways. I'm doing like a casual letter, like handwritten letter. Hey, is your home still on the market? If so, can you give me a call?
Hmm.
So I'm doing like a case
Nice.
study right now. I'm trying that. And then I'm also sending actual more formal letter in a bright green envelope, handwriting it out, and then sending it to them that way. So I'm just going to try to touch them multiple times, because what I'm finding in my market, I don't know if this is true or not, but when I talk to people and the expired that I have taken, I've asked them, I'm like, can you share with me how many calls you got? And in my market, they're like, I could probably count. I've got 30 in a day. I don't know why I answered your call. I thought it was the doctor's office. I just, whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm obviously going to keep calling because I know that works for me, but I'm also going to try to email them. I'm going to try to maybe drop off a packet in the mail, and then I'm going to also physically mail something just to see. So I'll share how that
Yeah.
starts working, but I don't know.
That's cool. And
think
maybe every market's different. Maybe down in Raleigh, North Carolina, Cary, the whole area where you're
exactly.
at, maybe mailers is it's like a nice supplement to get maybe a few calls a week just from that, Rich, what do you think about the mailer side?
Listen, I've done mailers, right? I've done, similar, to your, 10 days of pain. And for me, it's, I rather use sweat equity over check equity, right?
Mhm.
And that's just me personally. I'd rather just pound the phones and figure a way out how to get in front of them, and or if that means just go knocking on their door. Somehow, some way, we're going to get in front of the contact. So that's just me. I built my business strictly on the phones. And I don't see a reason why I got to deviate, 12 years later.
Yeah.
And what do you guys? Okay, so pivoting to, I think also an issue or a problem that I've seen happening within, in general, like the phone warriors and other people that are calling with us on Zooms, is that it seems to be the narrative is that there's not a lot of expires right now. Their narrative is there's not enough numbers to call. So they think they look at it as like, well, it doesn't work for me to, like, going back to that point. How do you guys, like, I guess, think about in that way? Like, is there always enough numbers to call? Do they have to expand an area? What would you suggest, I guess, to some of these people in here to do for that?
Yeah. I mean, there's always old expireds, right? I mean, go back a year ago. Those people are definitely probably not getting the calls that the fresh expireds are getting. But that's exciting to hear. If they're not calling them, that just means there's more opportunity for us. So
Exactly.
I would start with the old expireds and start, there's always going to be expireds in every market. Doesn't matter if it's a buyer's market, seller's market, there's always going to be homes that are coming off the market. So
Yeah,
again, it's all
you just
about,
gotta find them, and look at the MLS, understand what, maybe look at 180 days, run a search, the last property 180 days, and maybe that was gonna come up in the next day or two. See which ones are canceled, withdrawn same days. But at the end of the day, there's always gonna be, whether it's just one or whether there's 50 in a day. If there's only one, then make that one count, right? Be different. Try to figure a way how to get that contact number.
Yeah, and
I-
then yeah, go ahead. What you gonna say something?
No, I was just saying, figure out a way how to get that contact number, and figure a way how to get you in front of that lead, right?
Yeah, and I think also the last point on this is, for me, it's like, just find your edge. Where can you get an edge with these expires if they're so far and few between? Then, if we know that we're in one of the lowest levels of inventory environments in real estate in the history of anyone selling real estate that really is doing it, then how are you going to get an edge to get that source that it's predictable. So there's going to be at least one a day, right? And so how do you get that edge? Could be different times that you call. It could be going back, like Emily said, I think to like old expires, but just figure out like your own way. And guys, like, as much as we want to follow different game plans, it may be something that is not part of any coaching program. You got to think of it on your own. Like, it's okay. You have permission, at least from us, at least from me, to say you can go and think outside the box about how to generate your own way of getting in touch with these withdrawals and cancels and these expires, because they're always going to be there, always. And by the way, and on top of that, I would also argue that I think a lot of agents also stop just when they say, I don't want to sell anymore. So going into the conversation, now we talked a lot about the front end, how to get in touch with them. Now we're into the conversation of this. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Like,
dialogue, scripts and
it's
dialogues.
like, what is your, like, if they say, oh, well, we took it off the market because the market shifted on us or whatever. Like, Emily, you could start with that. Like, what do you say to them to maybe get them to open up a little bit, to maybe help them buy something later or refer them out, whatever,
I think it's all question based. So it's just digging in and asking the right questions and taking a genuine interest in the situation. So I would say, okay, I certainly appreciate that, but you did put the home on the market. So can you share with me, if you don't mind me asking, what was the main reason for selling your house? And then let them talk. And so kind of bring up those pain points. Well, they wanted to move to Florida to get to family, or they wanted to buy a bigger home because they just had their fourth kid and they just don't have enough space. And so you kind of pull out those pain points a little bit more and just keep pushing. And, eventually they're just going to start talking. And then from there, you land the appointment. So I think it's a lot of active listening, understanding where they're coming from, actually taking a genuine interest in what they're saying, and then just, quickly setting the appointment. So I think we overcomplicate it and we try to handle too many objections. But it just comes back to what's their motivation? Why did they sell in the first place? And how can we solve their problem? So,
yeah. Rich, what do you think about that?
I mean, listen, I've thought this through over the years, and I've always crafted different ways to come up with different objections and how detail oriented and, let's call it trick the client into giving us the information. But the basics of who, what, when, where, why is so powerful to me, because when somebody says, oh, we took the house off the market, I just simply ask why. And sometimes it stumps them because it's like such a direct question. And, depending on what their answer is going to be. And then it's just another why. Why this, right? And then eventually, like Emily was saying, is the most important part about any conversation you're going to have is, had your agent sold your property? Where were you planning on moving to? And 90% of the time, we're going to get the answer to that, right? And then we're going to be able to figure out what their motivation is. And then from there, we can figure out where in the script are we going to start communicating back and trying to figure it out, right? Is it a condition or is it an objection, right? And they both look the same sometimes, but we just got to know how to drive deeper into each particular part of what we're saying, and just listen to those little subtle hints that sometimes the client gives us. What about you, Dean?
And I'm sure you don't say just like why, like a nice, like a direct, like right to the jugular. You say it curiously. And I think, Emily, what you're talking about is being curious. Guys, this is sales, right? Like, so it's, I think like, to your point, we make it more complicated than what it is, but being in sales at the highest level is being divinely curious and like seriously going into curiosity, having the empathy when you say, really, why? Or in a different way of how you would say it, Rich. And I would also argue, if they say to us in any way that like, and you let's just assume that you are a sales warrior, phone warrior, you've gone through the steps, you've asked all those different questions. I would argue, well, what if there's a referral opportunity? Do you even know, like, to your point on that? Like this morning, I'll give you an example. I sent out 2 referrals this morning. When they said, I'm taking off the market, we're not going to be doing anything, I sent out a referral to actually Charlotte, North Carolina. Actually, it's posted in the group right now. And that was as a result. And he was like so happy that we were even doing this. So the thing is, I think there's more. It's not always just getting an appointment, getting listening. I think it's also digging deeper to find out what is their pain point, to your point, Emily and Rich, to help them get what they want, which is they want to move. And if they still like to move, that's fine. Then let's figure out a way to create the solution for them.
Yeah, I love that. You're so good with referrals, Dean. I feel like you do a good job at that, and then they appreciate it, and then they remember you. So even if it's like, well, we can't do anything physically now because the school year started, it's just not an option, they're going to remember you in 5 months or whenever it is that they want to sell because you provided value. And that's what it
And
comes
even
down to.
and even if they don't, guess what? It's a talking point for me. Hey, I put you in
Exactly.
touch with, Mary Smith down in Charlotte, North Carolina, whoever it is. And it's like now, like, oh yeah, you were the guy. Oh, got it. Awesome. Yeah, we still
Yeah,
didn't sell, we still didn't put it on the market. Oh yeah, why don't you come over now? Well, now I've made that connection, that synergy, right? So it's like all
exactly.
that.
And I
Rich, what were you
guarantee you,
gonna
of the
say?
30 or 40 calls we're getting, nobody's doing that. So,
I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, I do have a couple quick questions, right? Like, kind of switch gears a little bit, right? One thing that we were talking about is calling clients, right? So where are we getting the phone numbers? Where are you guys getting the phone numbers from? For the average agent who's never picked up the phone before, who doesn't even know what expired listing is, where are you getting the phone numbers from?
the
Vulcan
phone
7,
book.
right?
What'd you say?
Yeah, I was kidding. I said the phone book. Yeah, Vulcan 7. You guys both use that, right?
Vulcan
Yeah.
7, absolutely.
Okay. I use Espresso Agent, which is like a knockoff version of a Vulcan. It's the same data. And then there's Redex, and then there's a third, right? Mojo.
Yeah.
Mojo.
Yeah, I've used Mojo more for like the dialer, but I mean, Vulcan
Mhm.
7 provides all the data to that. Not a knock on Mojo. I mean, hopefully we there's something there with, with them maybe in the future, but the data just isn't the same in my opinion at all, like
Mhm.
compared to what they have there. So yeah, though that's how we're getting the phone numbers. I mean, guys, even I'll put it out there. If you are questioning how to get phone numbers of sellers, just type in Google. There's be a ton of AdWords that'll be redirecting you to the right sites that are advertising to get them to buy the sources that will find that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you got Spookio, you got True People Search,
Yeah, True
which is
People Search is a big
free,
one.
which is
Yeah,
free, yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
And then we kind of touched upon it, but like the dialers, right? Use Espresso, Vulcan 7, Mojo, Redex, all of them have a dialer that's built into it. But have you guys ever hand dialed before?
I do. Yeah, I like hand dialing because it keeps me focused and it keeps me off social media.
Same
I
here.
have,
So,
I have to
do.
work on that a
Yeah.
little bit. That's
Yeah.
awesome, Emily, actually. I mean, that's has that worked for you? Like Emily, like have you been able to get more
It
contacts
does.
that way?
Because I know who was it? Dan Mum said he did it. So I was like, I'm going to try it because I find myself as I'm going through the dialer. So I just do a single line dialer. I'm like on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm not focused. And so I'm like, I need to figure out how to either I'm going to delete the app while I'm prospecting, or I'm going to figure out another way. So I was like, I'm going to start hand dialing. I know it's a pain, but I think it'll keep me focused. And so, it takes a little more time, but that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm a little bit too impatient for the hand dialing at the moment, but because Mojo seems to be working for me, so that's all good. I seem,
Mhm.
what's interesting, when you call them a few times like in a row, I seem to get more pickups anyway. So
Mhm.
the first round out of let's say 10 expires, I'll probably speak to 2 to 3 at the first round. Then the
Mhm.
next round I go through, I'll probably speak to 4 to 5. So now I'm already 50-60% of the list is already done. And I just have like the extra stragglers that just it's an LLC or some other random, number or whatever that you can't get. But hand dialing, if that works for for you guys, yeah, it's awesome.
Are you guys
Perfect.
texting much, or do you guys do a whole lot of texting? If they don't answer, do you text them and say, "Hey,
I don't
No,
know.
never. I don't text.
I,
I have
It's just
time-sensitive
all.
information I need to share with you"? What's that?
No texting. If I'm feeling adventurous, you'll get a voicemail from me randomly. But other than
Yeah,
that,
I used to do
no.
voicemails too. People question about that, right, Rich? Like, should you drop a voicemail? Should you not? I
Yeah.
used to, but like the days that was 10 years ago, honestly, that I used to drop voicemails and it actually worked, is what I'm saying. I don't know about you, but
I do. I
Yeah.
do leave voicemails because I don't think many people are. I think people are just moving on to the next one. And one of the listings I took earlier in the year because I left a voicemail. They said, "I've got a ton of calls, but you were the only person that left me a voicemail." I didn't know who all these people were calling. So
Absolutely.
I
yeah,
don't know.
Well,
yeah.
listen, I know we're coming up on time. We actually have about 4 minutes left. Couple quick questions. Dean and Emily, what advice would you give to any agent out there who's either fearful of to make these calls or, just advice about, expire listings?
I
You
would
want to go
say
first?
partner up with somebody, start role playing to get comfortable with the scripts and the dialogue, join a group, join our phone warriors group, join an accountability group so you don't feel alone. Because it is intimidating. I think for all of us when we first started, I'm sure we had reservations and concerns about just calling people out of the blue, but the more you do it consistently, the easier it gets. So I would say find a partner, join an accountability group, and role play.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it's like having a gym buddy. You go to the gym, like if you're going to work out or whatever, it's always better to work out with somebody. It's just easier that way to, manage that. I would also argue that the more consistent you are with calling expireds, the less competition you're going to have. And what I mean by that is if you show up every day and you're getting better and better at the script, at the dialogue, you're coming in with more intensity. I think people don't realize how intense you need to be on the phone in order to get success with this. I think that there's not a lot of talk about that. Everyone wants to know, how do I find the numbers, or what do I do? What do I say? That's all great. That's all out there. It's been out there. But guys, like the intensity is where you're going to transfer your energy over the phone so they can feel that you're authentic enough to meet with you in person. And I think if you don't work on that, and that's how you get better, and that's what gets the competition away. And also keep in mind, with all the robocalling going on and also the ISA work that is happening out there with all these bigger teams that you're competing with, and maybe your local market, if you're an individual agent, or if you're on a team that doesn't have ISAs, but other teams are calling those with ISAs. If someone says to you, oh, I have 30 people call me, in my opinion, that means only really 4 to 5 people called you. And I would say half that list are probably ISAs that are calling you from the Philippines or somewhere else. And your competition is actually only two other agents that are doing it. And if you're on level 10 of your energy, level 10 of your intensity, and you know what you're saying, you have virtually no competition. So it's how you look at it,
Yeah, I love that. That's so true.
Yeah.
What about you, Rich?
The advice I would give,
Yeah.
don't fear the phone. The other person, other end of that line could be having a bad day if they say something mean to you. Don't take what they say so literally. Brush it off, laugh. Laughter's great, right? Because it keeps you happy, keeps you laughter's just great, right? Joke around with the person on the other end. If if they're saying that, saying anything negative to you. But the only advice I would say is just keep going. Don't let anybody get in the way of your appointments. Don't let anybody get in the way of your dreams. Don't let anybody get in the way just from you overall as a human. So that'd be my suggestion. Just keep going, stay consistent. It's just a phone. Just at the end of the day, it's just a phone. Keep making a call, because you're always, 10 no's is any closer to a yes.
Yeah, it's true. They don't know who you are. So if you mess up, you hang up. You call them tomorrow. So
exactly. I'll call them in 20 minutes.
Nice.
I've done
Good
that.
stuff.
All right. Well, listen,
Okay.
any final, last 60 seconds here? Anybody have any final words they want to say? Anything?
Prospect with us.
Yeah,
Don't
I
be
was going to say
alone.
the same thing. We have over what? How many members now do we have, guys, in the group?
We're up to
600, 500?
570. Yeah, 575, I think now.
All right, so
Yeah.
575. And real quick, while I'm thinking about it, how can they find the information, and how can they get a hold of both of you if anybody wants to DM you?
Facebook. Just go on Facebook, join the phone words that way. And you can find our personal information on the group as well. Yeah.
At the Dean Clark group, at the Adamski team, and was it at the call group for you?
Sure, that's perfect.
All right, guys.
See you all next week.